Hello and welcome to Stable Hands Pet Design Studio, where we will be bringing you animal-themed crafts and DIYs. Please join us on this new journey by hitting the red subscribe below. You can also find our social media and other helpful information in the description box below. Good evening. I'm Laura. I do most of my crafting in the evening, so again, I'm coming to you recording in the evening. I do that because we have twin boys that are 1 year old that are currently sleeping, so I wait for them to go down. I'm also expecting a little girl the week before Thanksgiving, so we've got a lot going on. I am going to be showing you a DIY pet placemat tonight. Hopefully bring you a great DIY project that is on a budget that you guys can do along with me, and give me some feedback on ideas that you might like to see in the future for crafts to use with your pet, for your pet, as well as to decorate or gift your homes with. The ideal plan for myself, for Stable Hands Pet Studios, is to also sell some of these items or custom-made items on our Etsy shop. I will be including our Etsy shop link below in the description. I have a few more pet placemat ideas to put together still. I have to go shopping for some supplies that I need for those, and I will be bringing those to you as well, so that we can hopefully find ones that either you would like to purchase from us, or that you can make for yourself at home. So stay tuned for those to come. Let's get started with this placemat. Good evening. I'm putting my hands here so you can see them. We are starting this craft project. As I mentioned, it's a dog or cat, or even a pet placemat. My idea is for it to be for use under your food or water bowls, to help contain the water and hopefully protect your floors underneath. It is black. I realize it makes the screen completely black because it is bigger than my space that I have to craft with. And so the top of the mat is sitting against my video tripod. You can't see. You can maybe see the marks a little bit, but I pre-marked these before I started the video because I was struggling with what to mark it with so that I could see my measurements, but have it, not ruin the project. So I found in my stash of craft supplies, I found this hot cinnamon sketch and sniff gel crayon. I don't know if it's backwards for you guys or not, but and it's actually a pack of 5. So it has 5 colors: burgundy, blue, brown, green, and then red. And so I chose the red one. They do smell, like this one does smell like cinnamon. But anyway, I've made some red marks on here on this mat to break it out. But what I did, first of all, this is a doormat from Dollar Tree. So it cost me $1. I actually bought 2, so this is one that I'm going to be working on. And then I have another one elsewhere to do another project with. So essentially I measured it out. It came out to around 23 inches. And then I know that I want to put this stencil on it. Cookie cutter. I'm going to put a bone shape on either side of our hound dog's name. So I use that on the mat to help measure and place out things. And then this is a stencil. It's all uppercase letters. I do have the lowercase, but I'm going to do Riley's name in all caps. And again, it's a stencil from the Dollar Tree. Again, I would like it a little bit bigger than the current size, but it's the biggest one I have without being too huge. So we're going to use this stencil. And these, I also took the measuring stick to the letters so that I knew how much the width of the letters were, so I could figure out how long Riley's name will be. And so I took, this is probably way too much detail for you guys, but I took these little makeup sponges and essentially just was like, let's see what 2 inches from the edge looks like, and put the makeup sponges there in the same length as the cookie cutter. And then I did 2 inches from this end and put the cookie cutter at the 2-inch mark, and took 2 sponges and did the same thing and marked out where the cookie cutter would be. And then I knew that the letters are 1/2 inch wide, so I measured out the ruler between these two is essentially 12 inches, but it's about 12.5. So I just placed the ruler between the 2 spots for the bone, found the center, which should be about 6 inches, did 5 inches out total, so really 2.5 each direction. And that's where this marker came in. And I just put a dot at each of those marks, a dot on the outside of each of the sponges. And now I know where all my stuff is going to be going. Because I now have red dots where all my items are going to be. So it's probably easiest to start with the stencils. And this mat also has lines on it. You probably can't see them, but it's black lines, ridges that are in the mat itself. So I'm going to use those to guide my stenciling so that my letters are straight. We don't need that red marker right now. Hopefully the babies stay asleep so I don't have to stop the video. But essentially, you'll line your letter up with the first, I'm going to put paint in here, the first, the line that you want to have the lettering start on. And then ideally you want to use a dabbing sponge, which this one I have to glue back together, so it's not going to work tonight. Which ideally the smaller one for the smaller letters, but again, like I said, the big one I think will run too much of a chance of crossing over to the other letters. So I'm just going to again use that triangle makeup sponge to do our letters. And I'll again find our red spot, find our line, make sure the stencil is lined up. And you want to put some paint on the sponge, but one of the keys with stencils is to not have too much paint on there. And you just then dab it onto the mat. And it might take a couple layers of paint to get it the darkness that you want without overwhelming the project with too much paint and causing bleed under the stencil. And I'm just dabbing some of the paint off of this sponge right onto the paint tray that I have there. And we shall see how this turns out, because this is my first go at this. I've never stenciled these mats. It's just a project that I've kind of heard about. And we might, because of the material, might have to use a paintbrush on the stencil. But we shall. I'm thinking we might have to go to a paintbrush to get in there. But again, you don't want to do too much paint because you don't want it to bleed. So I'm just going a little paint and just dabbing it into the mat. A little paint and dab into the mat along where the stencil is. And again, my paintbrushes are kind of new. If you have an old cruddy one that's kind of stiff and not as soft and flexible, that might be a better bet. It might get the paint to hold a little better. And I just probably put too much paint on that because it wasn't looking like it was turning white. Because this mat seems to be absorbing the paint. But we shall lift up the stencil. There you go. So that's the R. As I said, it's not the ideal stencil, but we are showing you the craft so you can do it at home. And I should grab a paper towel to make sure the back of this stencil does not transfer white to anywhere else on my mat that I don't want it. And we can wipe this side too, but this side really, wiping it isn't necessary. So that was R. His name is Riley. We should probably dry it a little bit in between paint sessions. I just use this embossing heat tool that I have for embossing crafts to help dry it. It's a little loud. It's the equivalent of a hair dryer, or they make heat drying tools now. They have a temperature setting so you don't mess up your paint. And so I just did a quick dry so we don't mess it up with the stencil. And then we need an eye next, so you line it up with where you want it. We're going to put it there. And again, I'm going to go back to using the paintbrush just because this mat is absorbing the paint and you're needing a little extra. And I'm just following inside the stencil with light paint, and I just apply it in layers because you don't want to go and do a big blob right over the eye with a whole lot of paint, because you're for sure to get bleed then outside of the stencil. And bleed is those little bubbles or extra lines or divots, and it's just not as clean as your stencil line, which is the whole goal or point of using stencils if you're not great at freehanding things like myself. Oops. So that's the eye. And again, I'm going to wipe off the back of my stencil so we make sure we don't get paint where we don't want it. Let's dry the eye. And I try to keep the embossing tool, heat gun, a little bit away from the product because it is really hot air paint, and you don't want to boil or overheat the paint, because that will make it bubble, and which is not good. It's not what we want, obviously. I should show you the paint I dumped in that container in a second, and just dabbing lightly up and down to add paint in the stencil area. We are working on the letter L right now. Just want to be careful. Our eye. L. EY. And it looks like, of course, which is no surprise, that my measurements might be slightly off because I gave myself more space between letters than what I needed. Paint that I'm using is Apple Barrel Matte Acrylic Paint in white. I have the bottle sitting upside down over on the side because it's getting low on paint. I have it because that's what my mom gifted me with to use for crafting, and I get a lot of my craft supplies from my mom. So the next step, as you can see, I've done the name. My red spots, my marks, were here and here. So my plan had been for the Riley, R-I-L-E-Y, to fit, and I know you're upside down, to fit between these two red marks. Obviously, I allowed too much spacing in my mind. Math is not my forte, by the way, for his name. But overall, in general, which you can't see because it's off camera, it's spacing-wise is not bad, but we will work on that for the future. And I said, ideally, with this size mat, I would want it to be a little bit bigger letters. But it works. It's cute. I like it. Next, we're going to do the stencil for the dog bone to give it a little, you know, a little something else. And my idea with this, I know you can do it, but my idea with this is to put paint on the edge of the cookie cutter. If you had a tray that you wanted to do, you could probably press it down. But I'm just going to try to put paint on the edge of this cookie cutter, all around the edge, in a pretty thick gathering, so that when I press it down, hopefully there's enough paint to make the line, the paint line, so that either it's a proper outline with the cookie cutter, or I can take another paintbrush and see a, you know, at least a baseline and paint over it. I'm also thinking that I'm going to color it in solid white. So I just need the outline so that I know where I'm going. And we're going to line it up so that actually it's this piece of the bone is on the line where the letters are flat, the bottom of the letters. So I'm going to find my red dots, push this down pretty hard so we make sure any paint that's on there leaves a line, and then lift straight up. And we have a bone. And then I'm going to do the same on the other side. Right now I'm going to make these bones solid, I think. And again, because of the material of the mat, it's probably going to take a good bit of paint, and you're not going to be able to just paint it on. Of course, I put the stencil on top of the paints. I'm going to put a bunch there because we're going to need a bunch. So we're just going to paint these in. I might pause the video so you don't have to watch me sit here and paint these all in, because we say the mat is absorbing them. But this is pretty much the idea for the mat. I do want to put paw prints on the top part of the mat, but I will have a list of supplies in the description box below so you guys can see what I used. And if you're interested in creating this yourself, I would love to see what your ideas are and how yours turn out. I chose white tonight just because it's a black mat. It's easy. Want to, you know, do your own pet, your cat, your dog, and see what designs you come up with. If you do bones or paw prints or just a name. I was also thinking of a solid bar across here, and then in like a solid white or a solid color, and then you go back and add in the animal's name in a color. And as you can see, this mat, and to fill in the dog bone, is taking up a good amount of paint. But yeah, and the tag for this mat, which is already in the trash, and now I'm realizing that this part of the mat is off screen. There you go. Does say that these mats are made to be cut. So if you have a cat and you don't have a dog, usually cat bowls are smaller than dog bowls depending on the size of your dog. So you can always cut the mat down. Our hound dog is 55 pounds. He's a Beagle American Foxhound mix is what we suspect, but no one really knows. So he's a pretty big dog. We have a giant water bowl for him and our Siamese cat to share. So I wanted to keep the size at the size that it is. I will be back to add the dog print bowl, paw prints to this mat, but you could leave it. But as you can see, it's a lot of black, and I personally like color. So in just a few seconds, you will see the video switch, and I will be adding the paw prints. Thank you. You can probably see Riley's name better this way, R-I-L-E-Y, although it still looks a little upside down for you. These are the stencils I just got off of Amazon, and I was thinking that I was going to use this one, this paw print, because it's the closest in size to the dog bones. Oh, you can't see it. Closest in size to the dog bones. That dog bone was off of camera, sorry. So I'm going to do that. I will link these in the description box below, so if you guys want them, you can get them. Because it gives you multiple sizes. Pick a color. Or pick a few colors. This one is Apple Barrel Caribbean. Again, a lot of my stuff, unless I can link it below for you, was gifted to me. So I'm not necessarily sure where I got it or how much it was for now. The next one, Craftsman, and it's the Grape Taffy. And I just picked colors that I liked and that I thought would go together. And then my orange is Folk Art, Pure Orange. And this one's a little bit thicker than the other ones. And we're having trouble getting one of the babies to sleep tonight, so I have the monitor on watching him. We shall see how it goes. This one is Apple Barrel Lime, or Limeade. And those are the colors I have chosen. Again, we're going to do this the same way, and I won't record doing the whole mat. And I'm going to likely just do the paw prints random because, like I said, I like color, and it kind of spread out. So we'll see if it ends up in a pattern or random. I'm going to go for random, and we will see how these new stencils work and how this turns out. So again, you just pick a color, and again with this mat, this material, I am using a paintbrush versus using a sponge, which is what I would normally do with a stencil, so that it stays in the lines. And as I thought with the white paint, the experience from the white paint, you're going to need a little more paint on the brush than you would normally put also for a stencil. But you still want to do layers. I'm not sure if you can hear that. I should probably turn that down. Make sure the stencil does not move. There we go. And we're doing the paw pad first, and then the toes, or toe beans as people like to call them. And I'm just dabbing in the paint so that it gets into the fuzzy of the fabric. I will likely change colors every time I move the stencil, just so that I can keep the current colors spread out, mix matched, and that sort of thing. And so I will stick the brush in the water, lift the stencil, and ta-da! We have a little paw print. I'm going to go ahead and wipe off the stencil in between, and I'm just using water and a paper towel. But you can use, a lot of crafters have wet wipes and whatnot on hand, but I do not. So, and water and paper towels works just as well. And then clean your brush in water. You might want to wipe it off on a towel so that the color doesn't transfer. I moved up and over a few lines, and let's start with the orange. Now this orange paint, which I will have to pick up again to remind myself what the paint maker is. It is folk art. Seems to be much thicker than the other paints. So I'm still dabbing it in, but it's going on differently than the other paints did. So just keep that in mind with your paints. Different companies make their paints differently. Also, the shelf life of the paints can play a factor. Again, these paints were gifted to me, so I'm not sure how long, that one's a little thick, they were, sitting before I got them. And there are things you can buy to thin out the paints or make them paint smoother onto a surface, sort of thing. But the name of that product is currently skipping my brain. And some spots are going to be heavier than others, but I'm trying to smooth it out. Different parts of the mat are thicker than others, and so it's taking the paint differently. And that should be the orange one. Not sure how well you guys can see that, but I think the sizing is working out pretty well. And I'm just going to keep with this, because that way, or I can go here, and we'll go a little bit lower, since there's nothing there with the Riley. And we'll do one more for you, because this one's kind of center of the screen. Now I'm going to do the purple, the Grape Craftsman's Craftsmart Grape Taffy. And we're just going to dab. Load the brush, and dab. Load the brush, and dab.
he's going to sleep. They're usually in bed between 7 and 8, unless I screw up their naps and let them sleep for too long, which I think might have been the case for tonight. But I'm not entirely sure on that. But I could not convince them to go to bed on time. So they went to bed just a little bit ago. And now I'm doing this recording, so hopefully I can get this done, use it for our dog, because I would love to be able to use it, because I've been wanting a mat for our dog's food area, and also get this video out to you guys. But right now that's what's working for us until I can get a few videos ahead of posting. I'd like to try and stick with the one a week. Hopefully I can do a few more than just one craft a week and load up on some videos, so when baby Abigail comes we will still have some videos for you guys. So that's the technique. Again, I'm going to go ahead and put these paw prints all over the mat, so this up here is not solid black because I like color. I will pop back in and show you the finished product. Alright, and here is the finished mat project. As you can see, it's colorful, semi-patterned, but also the pattern goes wonky. But I like it. It has our Ruru dog's name on it, Mr. Riley, with some bones and paw prints. It's currently drying, but I have it on the floor so you guys can see it. I hope you enjoyed this project. Feel free to ask any questions you might have in the comments section below. And as I said, I will add in the description box items, supplies that were used to the best of my ability. Hope you enjoyed this DIY, and I will be working on more for you soon.